Okay, this video shows the installation and creation of tow hooks. So it can be a bit of a pain to make them, but it's not that bad once you kind of get into it. So they're what they're made from is hole punch offcuts. So hole punch disc offcuts. So you probably made a lot of these little moon shapes when you were making the suspension, but you might not get enough. Now you only need like 2 of these moon shapes for each vehicle, so it's not a great number because each of these will make 2 tow hooks. So if you don't have enough, though, you can make lots more just by using a bit of cardboard and taking your hole punch and just punching some holes, moving a millimeter, punching some more holes, moving a millimeter, punching some more holes. And you won't get them all perfect, but you'll end up making a few each time. And the less you move it, it actually seems like a really small amount. I didn't even make any small enough. So yeah, just move it a tiny amount, punch again. If you do that for a while, you'll get a few usable ones. You want them to be really crescent, like basically as thin as you can get them while they still hold their form and shape without just disintegrating. And to use them and to have them work, you need to harden them. So take 2-to-1 glue and a mini clothespin here, and you just clip on one end as close to the tip as you feel comfortable. And sort of reinforce their structure with some 2-to-1 glue. And be especially sure to get it along the edges, because that will bleed into the cardboard quite a bit better. And really that's where you get your strength from, and your ability to not delaminate. And so just set them aside and wait for them to dry, and then flip them around and do the other side. So it does take a little while to make them, but it's not a difficult process. And then when they're completely dry, flatten them nicely against your table surface. You're going to cut them as close to in half as you can manage. You need 4 per vehicle. Now I'm going to show you on the SU-85 because it's a little bit more difficult to do than the T-34, 76, or 85. The process I use essentially on the back you can use for the T-34 and the T-34 85, which is just you punch out this, but don't punch it super deep or wide, because you get a nice hole there to set the hook in. With the front on the SU-85, these are more like trenches rather than actual holes, because there's the structure of the chassis below, and you don't want to put the kind of pressure and torque on your model that would be required to punch that hole all the way through at this point with so many delicate parts. So be careful and cognizant of how you're holding the model as you're doing this, because unless you've like pre-hardened these already several times, you do risk like breaking off little bits, especially these periscopes or whatever. And with the T-34, again, just be careful how you're holding it, because you don't want to break anything off. So now you're ready, you got your holes made. Now just take your tweezers. You might want to test fit them a bit to make sure they're going to get in there. Make sure these slots you have are big enough. Yeah, that's going to work. And they're swept back quite a bit toward these back ones are swept downward, so that the tip of this comes maybe 1.5 millimeters from the hull. So just put your glue on there, and hopefully fairly quickly we can get this set. So you can kind of wing it a bit with the first one, but with the second one you want it to match how the first one looks. So do a little bit of adjustment with this first one, and you may have to come back later and adjust it a bit if the second one just won't line up. And it's a little bit easier to use a toothpick to adjust their position than it is to try to continue to use the tweezers. And be careful not to get glue on between your tweezers, or else it's really difficult to let them go sometimes. That may yet happen to me, but I just wanted to warn you about it in case it doesn't. So continuing along. Now you can use 4-to-1 glue for this. I'm just realizing now I'm using 2-to-1, so apparently you can use that as well. I would usually choose 4-to-1 glue though. But it is kind of nice to have the extra time to adjust their position, so I would not recommend using full strength glue. So again, the first one's a little bit easier to set than the second one. The second one you're trying to match it. And the front, no matter whether you're doing the T-34 or the SU-85, are swept upwards. So there is a little line, if you can see on this one, coming off the tow hook symbols that goes up. That represents kind of the direction of the hook. Same way with at the back, you can barely see it anymore, but there are little lines that go down, and that shows the direction of the downward hook facement. So that will get you tow hooks. Now I would quickly, as soon as they're dry in place, hit them with another layer of 2-to-1 glue just to set them in their position and facing, and be really gentle when you're applying it with the brush until you've got a second layer of glue on there. They're still pretty risky.